You're listening to The Publishing Table, a segment of the Gather Poets podcast, where we explore how poems and books move from the page into the world. Here, poets, editors, agents, and publishers join in conversation, offering an honest look at publishing and the choices and challenges writers face along the way. I'm your host, Hannah Levy, a writer, editor, and proud member of the Gather Poets community. My guests today are Elise Powers and Michelle Halket, publisher at Central Avenue, a small but mighty press of poetry and fiction, to give behind-the-scenes insight on the publishing of Elise's debut poetry collection, The Size of Your Joy, coming out April 21st, 2026. This book is an intimate and empowering exploration of the complex and often contradictory experiences of womanhood, offering an unflinching look at how identity, resilience, and self-worth are shaped by the intersections of love, grief, and longing. Let's get started with talking a little bit about your path to publishing, because as we know, it was a really interesting process for you. So can you share a little bit about how the book came together?
Yeah, so I saw kind of like floating around Instagram the Central Avenue Poetry Prize contest. And I had been posting on Instagram, not really like submitting anywhere. I just wasn't really like into the process of like submitting really at that point. Um, and I just kind of decided on a whim to like submit some of my poems, and a lot of my friends were submitting, and so I was like, "Oh, like what's the worst that can happen?" And yeah, after a couple of months, I got an email that a couple of my poems had been accepted, and I was like, "Yes, amazing!" That was my first ever submission. I haven't. That was like my first submission, first acceptance, all in one. And then book deal, of course, to come later. So yeah, I think it was maybe like maybe 2 months or something like that. I'm not sure. Michelle, you can correct me if you know. But I got an email from Michelle, and she was like, "Hey, I really loved your work. Do you want to like hop on a call?" And I was like, "Yes." It's like, I don't know what this means, but yes. And yeah, she basically was just like, "We really love your work. And it's like, do you have a manuscript?" And my answer at that point was like, "Not really. But I can get you one. Like, I can do it. I have poems that I've written. It's not organized in any like manner, but like I have them. And I can write them." I was in this I just kind of was in a phase of like, the words were like pouring out of me. So I was like, I feel confident that I can do it. And yeah, that's how it came to be.
It's such a fun story. And
Yeah.
Michelle, I understand you mentioned that it was the first manuscript you had taken on spec from an author that you hadn't worked with personally before. So can you share a little bit about what made you reach out and ask to hop on that call?
Yeah. I mean, Elise, you're a bit of a unicorn. So just so you know, this doesn't happen all the time. But we can talk more about how contests and prizes are used to help build an author's platform. But we judge this prize blindly. And with each submission, you're allowed to submit up to 5 poems. And so when we were going through, I mean, it's total, we have no idea who's written what. And we ended up, and all the fonts are the same. Like we have no idea which poems belong to whom. And it came out through our group that we had selected all 5 of Elise's, which doesn't normally happen. And we're like, well, we can't put all 5 in the anthology. That would be weird. And so we selected the ones we liked. And then for months, for way too long, I had it on my list of things to do to contact Elise and say, "Hey, do you want to publish a book?" But like everything in publishing, you're just constantly racing to get across the finish line on books. And it was one of those things that just kept slipping my mind. And I was like, okay, I really have to reach out to this human being. And at the time, so we specialize in poets that share their work on social media. It's not all we do, but that's a big part of how we've sort of risen to success. And at the time I looked at her platform and I might be getting into something we're going to talk about later, but she just had like 10,000 or something followers, but it was her engagement. It was the people commenting that, for a smaller platform, there were a lot of people engaging with her in a meaningful way, wasn't just hitting like or whatever. And so that meant a lot. And I was like, ooh, this is taking a chance because you never know what the experience is going to be like when you start working with someone. So to take a book that hasn't even been written, that you really don't know the author all that well, was a huge leap for me for sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear. And I know our community is constantly talking about the concept of social media and should you self-publish as a poet on the internet? Should you be withholding poems for submission? And just kind of the alchemy that is social media. And so I'd be so curious to hear, Elise, about how you got started on social media. I think a lot of folks are kind of like starting poetry only accounts or like really
Right.
starting to invest more. And then I also am curious, Michelle, to hear more about Central Avenue's approach to working with poets in this way. So, like, yeah, just kicking us off with that, Elise, would be really interesting.
Yeah, um, I started sharing my poetry on Instagram. I think it was shortly after my 29th birthday, and I was just kind of like it was like kind of a way to like hold myself accountable. Felt like I was writing a bunch at this time, like after my daughter was born, I started writing a lot. And it just kind of was living in my notes app. And for the first time, I was like finishing these poems and like I was like proud of them. And I just kind of wanted, a place to put them. And yeah, I quickly found that the community on Instagram was like absolutely incredible. I have met so many just of like my like most like wonderful friendships through just in the last couple of years. Many of whom I'm like meeting at like AWP and like gonna like go do lots of fun things this year like with all of these people. But yeah, I kind of just started as a way to like um I don't know, just find community in like what I was doing and like read what other people were doing and just kind of like immerse myself deeper into the world of poetry. Um and then yeah, I just kind of at a certain point I was posting every day for National Poetry Writing Month. I like challenged myself to like post every day. And I think it was then that things really kind of started to like take off for me and people, not just my like friends who met online, not nobody in my real life knew about my account. It was secret. I changed it not it was shortly after I changed it to my name, but, when I first started my account, it was just Words by Elise, and I didn't even have a picture of my face. I was just, like, anonymous. But yeah, things started to pick up, and I kind of started to notice, like, a trend in what people wanted to see on Instagram, and I definitely have, like, poems that I like Instagram approved poems and like poems that I'll probably never post on Instagram. Just because like maybe they're like too vulnerable or like just simply I don't think they would do very well. Some of my best poems, in my opinion, flop on Instagram. So that's just
What
how it
are the
goes.
patterns? What are the patterns that you see?
List poems do really well. Anything that just easy to read, easy to digest, something that works really well as like a single like standalone poem. I have a lot of poems in my book that are stronger in the context of the rest of the book. And some of the those poems, I don't think I'll ever probably post on Instagram because I want people to experience it in like in the context, you know? So things like that, yeah, any I hate to say it, but like anything that's like really easily shareable. It's so lame to say it that way, but like something that someone's gonna look at and be like, "Oh my gosh, that's me," and like they want other people to know that that's them too. You know, just kind
No,
of like a yeah.
that makes sense. I guess my next
Mhm.
question was about how that translates to pulling together a manuscript, right? Which is a totally different format.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, Michelle, what about you mentioned that, you work with a lot of poets that are building platforms on social media. So would be curious to hear like what central publishing is seeing and how you like I guess what stands out to you when you're looking for an author, when you're looking for a voice on social.
Yeah. It hasn't really changed in the what year is this? 2026, 15 years since we've been publishing what some might call accessible poetry. So, Elise, that's what in the poetry category, if you're going to shelve it or look at it at a bookstore, you're going to have different styles of poetry. And this is what I like to call accessible, meaning it doesn't make me feel stupid when I read it, because
Mhm.
some poetry truly does. I feel like I maybe need an MFA or something, like a
Totally.
master's in fine arts.
Yes.
Um, and it is easily digestible, particularly by young people. And that is why I'm drawn to publishing it. Yes, it sells, but anything that young people are reading, I think that's super important. So I never, we've published award winners and things that get reviewed by the Washington Post. God rest its soul when it doesn't have a book section anymore. But um, we've gotten the starred reviews and all that kind of thing on that style of poetry. But there is this element, or this segment, which is very important. And it's almost like a bit of a gateway into the poetry world for a lot of people, because a lot of young people only know the old dead white dudes that they read in high school. And so to discover this segment is super important. So let me first proclaim and stand on my soapbox and tell you how important this segment of poetry is. Um, and don't even get into the whole fact that it speaks to the issues that a lot of young people are going through: trauma, questioning sexuality or gender, or exploring different aspects of their lives, whatever, immigration, whatever that might be. Okay. So if I remember the question correctly, it was, what are we looking for in an author's platform? And the, it's a variety of things. So in this kind of accessible segment, sharing on social media is important, and not the actual numbers. I've published people who have 2 million followers, and their book has sold less than someone who has 40,000. So it really has nothing to do with sales. Often that, like I mentioned, the engaged um, following is much more important. I do like seeing, I guess you could whatever you could characterize a professional writer, the characteristics of a professional writer. I want to see those same things on social media. So is it a consistent, have they identified who they are and who they're presenting, or what they're presenting to their audience? Are they adhering to like a rigorous, are they holding themselves to some sort of rigor in both the writing and the sharing of that work? Are they a good literary citizen? Um, we have a massive book coming out um, this summer, and the author is not on social media, but she is a very strong member of the literary community and the community in which she's writing. And so all of those things. So when I say a good literary citizen, are you supporting other writers? And you don't have to buy all their books, but are you blurbing? Are you showing up to one of their readings? And I think your authors will probably know, or poets will know, what a good literary citizen means. And so no matter what, those are the kinds of things that I want to see. And of course the craft. I mean, that kind of
Yeah.
goes without it saying. You have to uh, have kind of nailed down your craft, no matter what kind of segment you fall into or what kind of genre you're writing, love poetry, family poetry, um, exploring your sexuality, whatever that might be. Um, have I just sort of circled everything
No,
except your question?
that is it's so helpful to hear, and I think it's really great to unpack because I think so many of us have this sort of love-hate relationship with social media, and there's, really this pocket of incredibly active, very encouraging, very supportive writers on social, and, like, that's who I show up for personally as a writer, and then as a reader, I think what you're saying in terms of being able to, as you're scrolling, look at something and I kn even before you look at who posted it, have that sense of like, "Oh, I know who this
Mhm.
who this post is from," right? Like,
Yeah.
that voice that kind of jumps through the screen. And Elise, Michelle mentioned that about, like, having this presence on social where you kind of know who you're speaking to and, like, what you're talking about. What is that for you? How do you approach that in terms of, like, building out that platform for yourself?
Hmm. That's a tough one. I kind of have to hold myself, um, like, pretty accountable to myself when I'm posting to social media and when I'm writing, because I feel like it can be really easy to kinda get lost in, like, trying to, like, get followers and, like, write toward like I mentioned before, like, I noticed a trend and, like, what people wanted to see, um, and I wanna be clear that that doesn't like, I post those poems, but I write just what I wanna write. Like, I write, whatever is, um, inspiring me, what I'm noticing. I kind of just write to at this point, like, I kinda just write to myself,
Whoa.
um, and then, like, people, the truer that I am, like, the truer of a place where it comes from, if that makes sense, how do I say that? The more people resonate. And,
Totally.
like, I can't write for other people, and,
Yeah.
like, I'm sure that some can, I'm sure that that exists, but for me, it's always, like, has to center around, like, what I'm interested in, otherwise it's just not genuine.
Yeah. I
And
get
if you're
that all the
writing for the
time.
views and, like, if you're
Yeah.
writing for, like, a purpose, like, outside of myself like that, then, like, it never turns out good, It
No.
just it doesn't.
I get that question all the time
Yeah.
from writers. And, what is the market like? What is it looking for? And my advice is never write for the market. The article here is important. Never write for the market. Whenever you do that, it will be disingenuous and it won't be good. And people are smart; they get that right away. I think maybe I could change that instead of saying, "Don't write for the market, write for your market."
Mhm.
And your market is yourself. So you're saying, I write for myself. There's other people who are in similar situations or feeling the same way, whatever it might be. And those are the people that will come to you. So yeah, I say that all the time to people, especially because there are some genres that are so popular right now, like a romantic fantasy or whatever.
Mhm.
Don't write for that. That's a trend. It'll go away just like the vampires did during Twilight. And you've got to just be yourself, and that will come through, and that's what people will flock to.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so when you were at that inflection point where it was like, okay, you'd gotten these poems in the contest that were accepted, and now you were talking about the manuscript. Did you then have to, like, go out and write a bunch of poems? Did you end up
Yeah.
doing that?
Yep.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so
I did. I
what was
made
that
myself a
process
schedule. I
like?
had to write 1 poem every 3 days. And it was a lot, but I was like I said, like, I just I kind of felt like I had spent such a long time in, like, kind of like being a writer who didn't write. and just kind of like jotting down little like things in my notes and like noticing things and being like, oh, I want to like do something with that someday. And so, yeah, after my daughter was born, it just like the words were flowing. I was like, I just need to like, I had this backlog of things that I just like had to say. And so I just got organized and I was like, I'm going to do it. And I did.
Did you have a narrative structure in mind? Was that something that you discussed with Michelle, like, as part of the
Yeah.
process?
So yeah, we had like brainstormed a bit on like title and kind of like theme like within that a little bit. And it was all kind of the same, like I was writing on the same kind of things. It wasn't really like okay, which direction do I go in? It was clear to me like what this book was going to be about. It was more just like, what's the title going to be? Like, is there going to be a title poem? What are the chapters going to look like? How am I going to organize it? And yeah, it was always like, if when I went and looked at my poems and the poems that I'd already written, and, I'd written down lots of notes after I got off of that. First, I think it was just one call with Michelle, and then we like signed a book deal. Am I wrong? Was it just one? It was one, yeah.
I
And I
think we
just like
went back and
wrote.
forth
Was
in
it okay?
email.
Okay, yes, yes,
After
yes,
that,
yeah,
we
yeah.
talked
You're
about,
right. You're
yeah,
right. Thank you.
yeah.
But it was after that first call that I just kind of wrote down like everything, kind of like a loose outline, honestly, of like what I needed to write, like this story that I wanted to tell. Um, and it all kind of like thematically fit because it was just kind of, I mean, my experience kind of.
Yeah, and were there w h did it were there poems or, like, things that changed during the editing process from that initial period? Like, did you see an evolution at all, or did it feel like, I don't know, it came from that place where there was a fully formed, the idea was fully formed and it didn't require a lot of change?
Yeah, sorry, Elise. Yeah,
No, no,
I
go
mean,
ahead. Go ahead.
generally with our authors, we go through full editing. So whether you're self-publishing or traditionally I mean, the beauty of traditional publishing is that you get the editor. But if you're going to self-publish, you make sure you work with an editor or two. And in this case, there were three. And so each person can offer advice or thoughts along the way on what they feel works or doesn't work. And then it's this iterative process that you go through with the writer. Um, with Elise's, it wasn't really about how good her poems were, or within each poem they were generally pretty good, if I got it right. um, but good editors can help you shape the manuscript so that there is a flow and an arc. It's not that it needs to be a novel in verse, but I like our poetry to have some sort of arc that we're working through and going towards. um, and I think the editors helped with that, and I'm curious to know, Elise, too, like, your thoughts on that too.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
editors were essential in like in if nothing else, like the editing process wasn't like, okay, fix this is wrong. It wasn't anything like editing like you kind of think of. It was more just like, like I wonder if this, or maybe it was kind of like, it was very like just kind of suggestions, and anything that I didn't agree on, even if it was like a silly like grammatical thing. Like I remember there's a word, I don't remember what it is exactly or what poem it's in, but there's a word that Jessica was like, "This isn't like a word," and I was like, "I know, but can I keep it?" She was like, "Yeah, why not?" So things like that. So I don't think that any of my poems really changed like huge from the time that I um submitted the manuscript, but in the little tiny refinements, I feel like they changed huge. So maybe not I don't know if somebody on the outside would be able to really tell, but there's definitely things where I'm like, oh yeah, that's a 1,000,000% better poem. An example is my poem California. That one, I just had such a hard time in like the tenses for that one. It's just it was just really tricky for me to figure out, and yeah, Jessica helped me like just kind of like narrow in on exactly what I was trying to say without changing too much of the meaning, but like she just made it like a better poem because she was pointing things out that I, just didn't occur to me in the first, in my edits.
Do you think that going through that process now where you saw all the editorial suggestions and all the feedback and kind of understanding what the editors at a publishing, organization are looking for, has that affected your relationship to your writing or how you approach your writing when you're writing net new poems now?
Yeah, it definitely made me a better writer for sure. Yeah, because I think about like the little things and like I think about like, is this a comma splice? Like just little random things like that now. I had thought about that before, but I don't know, just something about going through your own work and seeing your own work being shaped in that way, definitely made me, a stronger writer in that way. And not just like the grammar and stuff like that, but also like the storytelling. Yeah, and like working with the editors like Bo helped me like shape my like the narrative arc in such a way that I just never would have thought of, and he had insights that I just was like, oh, like yes, thank you, So yeah, it was definitely yeah, it definitely made me a better writer.
Sounds so generative.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
it's wonderful to hear. And Michelle, I think something that folks in the Gather community have talked about is that, this feeling of poems having to feel very complete, very done, very like publishing ready, either when they're submitting their work somewhere or when they're thinking about putting together a manuscript for submission. Um, and what I'm realizing now through the process of conversations like this is that um, a lot can change. A lot gets shaped and evolves in the state of a manuscript. And I'm just curious, like, what are some of the essential, like, I would be curious to hear from you, or like, what are you looking for? I guess let me rephrase the question, but like, what are we open to changing, like in terms of like, I don't know if it's titles or formatting of poems, or like asking for additional poems on that theme, and what feels like it has to be essentially done when you're looking at
Mm,
a manuscript, because it's
yeah.
like sometimes I think there's this vulnerability with writers where it's like, I don't know. There's a
Excuse me.
question that we get a lot, which is like, I don't know if this is ready. I don't know if this is ready for submission. And so maybe the real question is, what kind of advice might you give to someone around this concept of like readiness, and how much is
Yeah.
an editing team would be willing to work, on
Yeah.
shaping and evolving a group of poems?
That's a very insightful question, and I'll answer it in a humorous way first. And I'm laughing because Elise can fully understand this feeling. There's always something more to change.
Mm.
And right and so right before we send a book to the printer, I have to get sign off from the author. It's like, okay, this is the version we're sending to the printer. It's like, oh, just change that one more thing. Okay, go change
I
it. And
know.
then you
I'm
send it
so
back.
guilty
And
of
it's
that.
not just you, not just you. And you send it back. They're like, okay, just two more things. So the reality of art is that it's never finished. You would always want to change it, but I think working with an editor and a publisher as well, they're going to make you say it's done now. But let's back up and go back to that sort of
My long
manuscripts.
question.
Yeah, no, it wasn't long at all. Um, that, when you're in that manuscript stage and you're trying to put things together, as a traditional publisher, yes, we're looking for a good book, and we're not, generally speaking, taking things on spec. So when a book comes in, whether it's a novel or a book of poetry, we are looking for it. I guess maybe if you would self-publish it, then that's where we would want to see it. But, this is no slag on self-publishing at all. I think that there's a lot that goes out into the world that isn't quite ready. And so that's the beauty of having those editors work on it, especially different eyes.
Mhm.
So for me, I would say the decision to acquire a book is more the author and less the book.
Hmm.
So if the book is, I mean, of course, I want to read it and go, whoa, this person has a way with words, or I really like this kind of new kind of thing to me, or whatever that they've put together, or a subject matter that we haven't published before, or it fits neatly within the season that I'm building. That's one thing. But probably 60% of it is the author themselves. And it goes back to what I said about their platform and their professionalism. So the bane of there's a couple banes of publishers' existence. One is returns, which the author can't really do much about. But the other one is, we acquire, and then, 12 to 18 months later, that book comes out. If that is not a professional author who is dedicated to their craft and I'm not saying it has to be a full-time job. I'm just saying dedicated to their craft. They're going to lose interest by the time the book comes out, and then, there's no sales. Because they've moved on to something else in their
Hmm.
life, and they're like, "Ooh, writing, that's sparkly. I'm going to try that." And so for me, it really is about the writer and less about the book. But I don't want to say that it's like a 90-10 thing. Um, and plus this, like, we're a small I like to call us small but mighty. So we're distributed by Simon and Schuster. So our books do very well. I just came back from Winter Institute last week, which is like a massive conference for booksellers and the trade. And like, our books do very well, but this is a small press, and so you're going to be working with me and an editor, so we have to get along. Like, our personalities have to jive, and if they don't, that's going to be a crummy experience for both of us. So it is about that too. So when I'm acquiring, I'll ask for a phone call or a Zoom, and I kind of have it in my head. I'm like, yeah, we're going to take this on, kind of thing. But if I get into that Zoom call and I'm like, I don't think we're a good fit, it's
Yeah.
like speed dating or
Yeah.
something, then it's like we're just setting each other up to be miserable for the next 18 months. So yeah, that was
No,
my
I
long
appreciate
answer.
I appreciate that answer so much. I think that's not something that people consider a lot. And I think especially in this, all the submitting that we're doing is online, and people behind screens, and just looking
Yeah.
at websites and looking at contests and looking at places that are taking submissions. And so sometimes you lack that human connective element when you're at the beginning of the process. And so just
Yeah, but
keeping in mind how important the connection is, and encouraging writers to follow the editors, to look at the people who are the people behind the press. What are
yeah,
they sharing and promoting? Signing up for their newsletters or email just really getting involved and understanding the people behind the press,
yeah.
especially going through a small press. I think that's really good advice. I mean, that's what I would do after listening to you speak. I'm kind of like,
Even,
all right, I need to start really paying attention to the people that
yeah,
work at these presses, because that's who I'll be working with.
because we're
Um,
watching. Honestly, we're
yeah.
watching, and it's not just small presses. So I had the benefit of being able to be on stage with 7 other editors, and they're all massive presses, like world, like renowned indie presses, as well as the big 5. And I had this conversation with an editor at a big 5 press, and they were talking about a particular author that we both know. And the editor kind of went, they were like, "Oh yeah, I published that book." So just so you know, we publish novels as well as poetry. And the editor was like, "Yeah, I worked on whatever book that was." And then they just kind of looked away, and I was like, "You look like you have something more to say." And they went, "You're either really perceptive or I'm a bad poker player," kind of thing. But the reality is that editors talk, publishers talk. No, we're not on the phone like gossiping about writers, but we do see, because that's our job. It's my money. So if I invest like $15,000 into a book, that's the money that I could have paid my groceries and my mortgage and, my kids' education and all that kind of thing. So I have to know who I'm working with. And trust me, we see so many bad, bad examples of bad behavior, especially online. So just be that good literary citizen, be supportive, be professional. And that just goes so much further than the book that you wrote, I think. And it's not just me, the big five feel the same way.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such good advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So on this topic of success, and I know sales are, as you just mentioned, very important because of the investment that you're making. And obviously, the best way to measure is something successful is how many people are buying it. But I'd be really curious to hear, like, especially for you, Elise, too, like what that word means for you in the on the eve of the launch of your book, how you're thinking about like that word. Exactly.
I mean, honestly, like that's already like checked off. Like this is, like yes, I'm super excited for you know, selling books and like all of that, of course, but like I wrote a book. Like that's crazy to me. Like a lifelong dream. Like there it is. Yeah, it just is like that was like the thing, and like I'm so excited to see like where all of it goes and like the amazing experiences that I'm going to have because of it. But like the success for me was like I just got like two big heavy boxes of books in my
Oh,
office, and they have my name on it, and like check, done. That's success. And like, of course there's lots to come, but um I'm pretty happy with
yeah.
myself.
Well,
So,
big congratulations. Big congratulations. Michelle would be curious because obviously sales, for
Yeah.
you, but like what
Yeah.
else like what makes a launch successful like this besides that?
Yeah. It's more so for us, I mean, it does come down to a P&L, like a profit and loss statement. So we look at when we're going to acquire, we have a P&L built and we say, okay, this is what we think will sell and this is what we think it'll cost to produce the book. So that includes not just the printing, the editing, the marketing, all the fees, all that kind of thing. And so you never take on a book that you think is going to stay in the red. But the reality is that the majority of books don't ever go into the black for a traditional press. If you're hybrid or something, that's a different kind of story. So for me, it's all about expectation. So if I say, okay, here's Elise's book, and I think we're going to sell 10,000 copies. If that book sells 6,000, then it's a failure. Right? Because I thought it was going to sell 10 and only sold 6. But if I forecast that it's going to sell 3 and it sells 6, I'm like, whew, awesome. Kind of thing. We're going back for more printings and all that kind of thing. Um, so it really is about like level setting our expectations in the beginning. And it goes, like I mentioned, that, that author who had 2 million followers or whatever. I was like, I'm going to retire to my own private island. I'm going to sip rum drinks. And and the book sold fine compared to some of the ones that I thought were going to sell 1,000 copies.
Mhm.
Um, so there's that measure, the expectation. The other is, did it go into the black? So was I able to pay for all of my expenses in that first year of the book's life? So that's what we call the front list. While it's in the front list, did it pay for its expenses? Sometimes books don't come out strong. Elise's book is poised to come out really big. Like the last day we were just talking about this. I don't know what is going on, but the algorithm gods have taken off or have
I saw your
favored the book.
Amazon. I saw your Amazon rankings.
I
It's so
know.
cool to see that.
I know. I had no
Yeah.
idea. Michelle emailed me this morning and was like, "What happened? Like, why
Yeah.
are you why is it on all these lists?" And I'm like, "I have no idea."
It is on
Luck.
fire.
Right book, right
Like,
time.
Yeah.
yeah. So, so that's great too. And I think too, like, success is about the money because it's, I don't know if a lot of authors understand this, but when you become a best-selling author and you're generating profit for your press, it enables that press to take on new authors and give chances to new people who would never have gotten that chance. There's a lot of like authors love to get down on traditional publishing of whatever, I only make whatever percent and that kind of thing. The reality is that this is not, you don't go into publishing to make money. It's not an easy thing to do, but best-selling authors have a direct correlation or direct impact on whether or not a new debut author gets signed. And so I always say to the ones that are our best-selling authors, we've had people who've sold 250,000 copies. I'm like, do you know that you're directly responsible for taking on Elise, for example, or taking on the 6 other debut writers that we're going to publish this year? And I hope that there's
Very
that
cool.
sense of ownership and knowing that you contributed to something so meaningful.
Good
So
literary
that's a,
citizen.
you're a good, yeah, because you were successful, that led to the opportunity for someone else. And so that's another definition of success, even though sure you're getting royalty payments, but just knowing that, I hope those authors know that.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
it's so
Yeah.
cool. Elise, how are you emotionally preparing for the debut? Like, I guess, how's that going in terms of seeing the rankings start and the blurbs and knowing that it's soon going to make its way into so many people's hands?
It's honestly just, like, so surreal. Like I said, this has always been, like, a dream of mine. It was always, like, a someday thing, like, "Oh, someday I'll write a book or, whatever, I'll figure it out later." And it's so crazy because this dream just, like, fell into my lap, and now seeing it all play out, I'm just like, "This is crazy, like, this can't be real." Yeah, it truly is so surreal, like, it's so exciting and, like, I'm just so grateful. Michelle, I tell you all the time, I'm so grateful to you. This is just the most incredible experience, and Central Avenue is the most incredible publishing company. I just can't believe, I had the good fortune to work with them, so yeah, just all around, like, this has just been such a crazy experience that I still am not fully convinced is actually happening in my life, so that's how I'm
Wow,
doing.
that you're too much. That's too much. I'm gonna correct you though. This didn't just fall into your lap.
I was gonna
You
say, I was
worked
like, it sounded
you
like you
worked
did a
hard.
lot of work.
Yeah. And you set yourself up for this way before. You could have, the reality is that you could have come to me at some point in the following months and said, here's my manuscript kind of thing. Or waited until we were open for submissions or something like
Mhm.
that. Um,
I
it's
probably
just
would
for,
have, to be honest. I probably would have submitted.
it's just that it happened this way, which was so
Yeah.
unique. So obviously it was
Yeah.
written in the stars, but don't sell it. Don't say it fell in your lap
Thank
because
you.
I truly believe you work your butt off and you did before you got the book deal.
Yeah,
Thank
even
you.
just
I
by
Yeah.
putting
appreciate
yourself
that.
out
I
there,
appreciate
like
Yeah.
there is emotional labor, there's physical
Yes.
labor and
totally.
creative labor. But then as I know personally, there is emotional labor in sharing your work, sharing,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
with the very distant hope that maybe one day you'll have a book deal, like I think that's
Totally.
where a lot of people are at. And so I think it's really motivating to hear um that the work can really pay off. And I want to go back to publishing with Central Avenue. You've had this wonderful experience. And Michelle, earlier in the conversation, you did mention that opening up contests and submitting to Central Avenue in that way is a really great way to get on the the business's radar. So I would just be, can you share a little bit more about, for folks interested in Central Avenue, like how that works and like what you're seeing in terms of moving from submissions, contests to the book deal pipeline?
Yeah. So we're generally agented only. So an author needs to have an agent to submit. However, poetry is an exception where we'll open about once every 16 to 18 months. And I just put out the call on this is for full manuscripts. And I'll just put out the call on Instagram and say, we're going to be open for the next month or whatever. And here are the 4 things I need from you. It's like a 1-page thing. Um, and a selection of your poetry. So we do that, and that you don't have to have an agent for that. The last time we opened was, oh shoot, I can't remember, but we acquired enough. I try to acquire enough for about 18 months because like in that, so it's usually between 5 and 7 poets. Um, because there's also things that are coming in from agents that I need to leave room for. And we are small, so I try not to take on too much. I have recently taken on too much, so find myself a little stressed. So I'm going to slow that down a little bit. For the contest, I definitely use, so we do an annual poetry prize every year. And so you submit like 5 poems, excuse me, and costs $25. And it's not a profit center. We just are trying to cover our costs for the prize. But we definitely use it to keep an eye on people. So, we might follow them on social media, and then we'll see them submit to the poetry prize. And then when submissions open, we see their name again. And by this time, with the poetry prize, we've already had experience, if they've made it as a finalist, working with them from an editorial perspective. And so we kind of know what they're like. So some good examples of this are Michelle Awad, who goes by the Constant Poet on Instagram. There's Sarah Jeffs, Christensen Jeffs, who is Dear Beautiful Friend. I'm trying to think of who else. Maha Hashwi. So these are all fall titles. So these were people who made it into our poetry prize, who then subsequently got book deals with us. And so I'm not saying, oh, spend the $25 and then you'll definitely get published. That's not it at all. It's more that we've had experience with these people over a couple of years and gone, yeah, I think they're cool. I think they're good. Yeah. So
That's
yeah,
really
but the short answer is that we're agented only, and we're only open for full submissions once every 16 to 18 months. Yeah.
I guess we have to let people know to keep their eyes on,
Yeah.
to keep their
Yeah.
eyes for those open windows, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just keep writing in the meantime.
Yeah.
Um, well, this has been so wonderful, and it's just so, I think it's so great to peel back the curtain and like understand a little bit more about the process. I have a little like lightning round, a Q&A. So Michelle, I'm asking one word to describe what you're looking for when you acquire manuscripts. Or a
This
phrase, or
was
a phrase.
okay. I'm going to use a phrase that has hyphens in it. How's that?
Go for it. Yes.
Okay. So what I'm looking for in a submission, new to me, or you could say novel, but it's not that it's brand new, whatever, never been done before. All stories have been told before, but new to me.
What kind of new to me stories have you been looking at
So,
lately?
so for example, Elise's book is a lot about motherhood and, that we're getting a little bit older, our bodies change, our perspectives change. We're not the angsty 20-year-olds that we were. So I don't really have anything like this in our catalog. So this was new to me. We have a book called 70,000 coming out in July, which is about the 70,000 books that were removed from Palestinian libraries during the Arab-Israeli War in the 1940s. And so those books have disappeared. And this poet undertook to write the numbers from 1 to 70,000. And then imagined each of them being, so those are all numbers
Wow.
that she wrote, imagined each one of those as a book. And so this poetry was so unique, experimental, and new to me.
Those are great examples.
Yeah. And so then I try to fit that within a season as well. So do I want, 5 books about Palestine in the same season? No, I want kind of a mixture. So sorry, that was not one word.
No, I asked a follow-up question because I was so curious.
One word
to
and
hear.
explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And Elise, a fear that you're releasing as part of this launch.
Oh, man. I would say, and this is just something that I've always struggled with, is just, I just have this fear that people are going to realize that I'm actually not that good of a writer and that they're just going to, I've always had this fear, not just a writer, but like anything that I do. I always have this fear of like, people are just going to be like, wait, you don't know what you're doing? And then get out of here.
Imposter syndrome.
It's
Imposter
real.
syndrome.
I
Thank you.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Releasing that, it
Yeah.
helps to,
Yeah.
work with such
We
amazing
all have
people
it.
who like boost you up.
Yeah.
And to be on Instagram and have a community of writers, and not just on Instagram, but any community of writers, Gather, Sustenance, like all of the people around you who know what you are experiencing and also feel the same way.
Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
answer. Does help with the imposter syndrome is to have people reflecting back to you what they see.
Totally.
And for both of you, a word to describe how this collaboration went.
Wonderfully. Ideally, for me. We'll see about sales for Michelle, but no, I'm just kidding.
It's funny because ideal came into my mind too, but it was exceptional. Like you've truly exceeded my expectations.
Oh,
And so you are the exception, not the rule. And I mean, I feel so positively about every author that I work with. But it's to go back to that, it's about the expectations. And so yeah, it's
totally.
been a great experience. And I'm so looking forward to all the amazing things coming. I know there will be lots.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited for your book. We encourage everybody who's listening to pre-order or order, get their hands on a copy. And I know you have some upcoming in-person dates that you've shared on social media. So for folks that are in various places, what are some of you're in Chicago with Maria, right?
Oh no, that'll actually be in Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah, that'll
That's right.
be
I'm going to try to come to that. That's right. Seattle. Sorry.
yeah.
I'm going to try
So
to fly up for that. So I'm really excited.
I'll be in Baltimore for AWP. Yeah, that'll be on Friday, the 6th. And I'll be at the Only Poems table at 3 p.m., I believe. And then with Maria, it's on it's May
18th.
May 18th. Yeah, at third place. At
I know because I'm looking at
6:45.
flights. I know because I'm looking at
Thank you.
flights.
That'll be so
It would be really
fun.
fun, yeah, to hang out in person.
I just
Definitely.
met the bookseller at that bookstore last week, and he
Oh, no
came up to me,
way!
and I was like, "One of our authors is going to be at your store in May," and he's like, "Who?" And I told him, and he was like, "That's awesome."
So fun.
It's a great
Yeah.
bookstore. I love that book. Totally, like, just iconic Seattle bookstore. So
Yeah.
All right,
really fun to see
Seattle,
there.
Pacific Northwest folks, come hang out with us
Yes,
in May.
definitely.
Well, Michelle and Elise, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We're so excited for this launch and just can't wait to see more of what both Central Avenue Publishing does. Elise, obviously, so looking forward to all of your writing and success to come.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. That was so fun.
Thank you. Yeah, that was super fun.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Publishing Table. If you're curious about Gather, feel free to find us on Instagram at Gather Poets, and we look forward to connecting.